Phyllis Diller made millions laugh with her wild hair and crazy jokes about her lazy husband, Fang. But behind the cackle was a woman drowning in secrets. Every week for over 30 years, she drove to the same place, a place her fans never knew about. Inside those walls was someone she loved more than anyone, someone whose condition she could never talk about on stage. The visit stopped in 1993, and that's when the real heartbreak began. What Phyllis hid from the world explains why she never stopped working, even when her heart literally stopped beating. Phyllis Diller was born in Lima, Ohio on July 17, 1917. Her parents were unusually old for the time. Her father, Perry, was 55 and her mother, Frances, was 36. That meant, as a little girl, Phyllis was constantly surrounded by older people and funerals. While most kids feared death, she became oddly fascinated by it. That strange comfort with dark topics would later become the heart of her comedy. Even though her family was Methodist and had German-Irish roots, Phyllis rejected religion early on. She faced hardships young, but instead of turning bitter, she turned funny. At Central High School in Lima, she would joke around with her classmates outside class. Those moments, small as they were the start of something much bigger. When the Great Depression hit in the 1930s, her family was crushed financially. She started selling newspapers to help, slowly building the tough shells she'd need later in life. Strangely, her last name had once been Schreiber, changed generations earlier, something she didn't even know until adulthood. Growing up in a quiet, often lonely house, she found herself making up stories. And before long, those stories started sounding like punchlines. At just 10 years old, in 1927, Phyllis was accepted into the Sherwood Music Conservatory in Chicago. Her piano skills were far beyond her age. By 1939, she was playing professionally with orchestras. But as incredible as that sounds, she quit. Not because she wasn't good, but because she believed she'd never be as good as her teachers. It was a painful choice, but deep down she knew it wasn't the right path. The Great Depression didn't make things easier. In 1933, her family's money ran out, and she had to leave Sherwood after 3 years. She started taking any job she could to survive. Later, she said, quitting music may have saved her. She hadn't failed. She had routed herself towards something even better. In 1935, she tried college again, this time studying music education at Bluff. But by 1937, she left again, this time for marriage. For years, she regretted giving up her dreams, but comedy would find her anyway. In 1940, Phyllis and her husband Sherwood moved to Ypsilanti, Michigan, where he had a job at a bomber plant. Life was tight. Their son Peter was born that year on September 27th. While the country was deep in wartime rationing, families had to make do with just $25 a week. That financial pressure, mixed with new motherhood, pushed her into postpartum depression. Between 1940 and 1945, they moved at least 8 times, finally ending up in California. Sherwood got work at the Alamo Naval Air Station, but money was always tight, and Phyllis was the one holding everything together. She found comfort in the radio shows she listened to while doing housework. Those voices, those jokes, they planted a seed. Her second child, Sally, was born in 1944. Around this time, Sherwood was often unemployed, so Phyllis took a job as a newspaper editor. That experience would become her secret weapon later. In 1953, they nearly lost their home, but instead of breaking her, it somehow became the moment everything began. She was 37 years old, and her career was about to start. Tragedy struck in 1945 when she gave birth to a son. Some sources say they named him Perry. Others say he died unnamed. He passed away just 2 weeks later. It broke her. Doctors believed it was because he was premature and medical help at the time wasn't strong enough to save him. They were still living in Alameda, and Sherwood had just lost his job. Everything felt uncertain. Phyllis, only 28 at the time, turned her pain into action. She started joining local theater productions in San Francisco. Performing gave her a place to hide her grief. But the heartbreak didn't end there. She suffered a miscarriage not long after. Over the next decade, she'd go through 6 pregnancies. Only 5 children survived. During this time, she began writing again, submitting articles for just $2 each, while hiding her grief behind a smile. Between 1946 and 1950, Phyllis gave birth to Suzanne, Stephanie, and another son, also named Perry, that brought the number of living children to 5. But while her family grew, their money didn't. Sherwood refused jobs he thought were beneath him, even wasting a $10,000 inheritance that could have saved them. They lived on food stamps, barely affording powdered milk. Phyllis earned $15 to $20 a week, writing for small papers. Life was hard. She had 5 kids under the age of 10, no help, and no support system. But instead of falling apart, she turned it all into a joke. Her future comedy would be full of stories about sit-down husbands and chaotic motherhood. But back then, none of it felt funny. It felt like drowning. By 1952, things got worse. They were evicted from their home because of $300 in unpaid rent. That same year, Phyllis got her first consistent paycheck, $75 a week, as a radio copywriter at Caro, in Oakland. The job saved them. She created a 15-minute segment called Phyllis Diller, the homely friend-maker, poking fun at housewife tips. The name was silly, but it gave her a voice. Sherwood had spent 2 years pushing her to perform, so she finally tried. Her first real show was at a veterans hospital. She bombed. Patients heckled her while she played piano, but she didn't quit. She turned the humiliation into fuel. That same year, she did her first stand-up gig. And even when they struggled with rent and had to pawn jewelry, she kept going. She told no one how hard things really were. Then came the turning point. On March 7, 1955, at age 37, Phyllis performed at San Francisco's Purple Onion. The audience loved her. She wasn't trying to be glamorous like other women. She made fun of her looks, her cooking, her life. She joked that her food could kill you. People couldn't stop laughing. What started as a short gig turned into an 89-week run, nearly 2 years. The club made over $100,000 off her shows. And suddenly, this tired mother of 5 was being taken seriously. Her pay was just $100 a week, but it led to TV spots by the next year. She had read a self-help book called The Magic of Believing and credited it for finally pushing her on stage. After 15 years of homemaking, she had found something just for her. In 1956, she transformed completely. She created a stage look that was unforgettable. She wore a wild horsehair wig, painted her face in exaggerated makeup, carried a long cigarette holder even though she barely smoked, and wore clashing clothes that made her look ridiculous and brilliant. She did it on purpose. She was nearly 40 and knew she had to stand out. Instead of trying to be beautiful, she made herself as ugly as possible and owned it. Her bookings went up by 40%, almost instantly. She started appearing on national shows. Her wig collection grew to over 50 pieces, each costing $50 to $100. Her signature cigarette holder was 12 in long and made of ivory. All of this became part of her legend. But beneath it all, she was hiding pain from a troubled marriage. She turned that pain into power. Troubled marriage. She turned that pain into power. On June 15, 1958, Phyllis released her first comedy album, Like a Lampshade in a Whose title shocked everyone, and some stores refused to sell it. But it sold over 50,000 copies in its first year. Her jokes about Fang, a lazy fictional husband, were thinly veiled references to Sherwood. She recorded the album in a small Los Angeles studio with just 20 people in the room. The humor was raw and fast. She delivered up to 200 words per minute. The album made her $10,000 in royalties by 1959 and landed her TV deals. Even Fang had a strange origin. It came from a typo in a script, but she kept it, eventually writing over 1,000 jokes about him. The success of this album proved that women could be just as bold, just as funny, and just as fierce as any man on stage. By 1959, she was touring nonstop. She hit over 150 venues, including New York's famous Blue Angel Club. That year alone, she traveled 50,000 meters and made $25,000, 3 times more than she had earned just 4 years earlier. She had a steel cabinet custom lead to store 50,000 handwritten jokes, each one on an index card sorted by topic. She would sit at her typewriter after shows, writing 100 new jokes every week. She performed so often she once collapsed from exhaustion after a 48-hour drive. But even then, she kept going. In 1961, something very unusual happened on television. A woman walked onto the Jack Paar show on April 5th and changed everything. She wasn't young, she wasn't polished, and she definitely didn't fit the mold of Hollywood beauty. She was 43 years old. Her name was Phyllis Diller. She had 5 kids, came from a broken marriage, and had only started doing comedy a few years earlier at the age of 37. Most people would have given up, but instead, she stood under those bright studio lights with a fright wig on her head, a long cigarette holder in her hand, and a loud cackle that made people either laugh or gasp. She didn't hide her struggles. She made them the joke. She called herself ugly before anyone else could talk about her chaotic home life in ways that made people laugh out loud. There was no woman like her on TV, not one. And despite being terrified, shaking so badly she could barely hold the mic, she kept going. That one appearance didn't just get her noticed, it launched her into stardom. More shows came calling. Soon she was on The Ed Sullivan Show, and comedians like Roseanne Barr would later say she changed their lives. This ugly duckling, as some called her, had suddenly become a star. 5 years later, in 1966, Phyllis took another big risk. She starred in her first sitcom, The Putes of Southampton, which aired on ABC. She played a once rich woman who was secretly broke, pretending to still have money so no one would find out. The show was wild. In one episode, she tried cooking a turkey in a washing machine. Paul Lynde and John Astin were just 2 of the strange characters who appeared on the show. The name of the show was even changed halfway through the season. Becoming The Phyllis Diller Show in January 1967, it only lasted 30 episodes and ended in April. The ratings were bad. It ranked 77th out of 91 shows. But even though it failed, it earned her a Golden Globe nomination. And it made people realize something else. Phyllis wasn't afraid to fail. Not on TV, not in life. Even TV Guide later listed it as one of the worst shows ever. But instead of burying it, she kept showing up. Even during the Vietnam War, she went on tour with Bob Hope, making soldiers laugh when they needed it most. Around the same time, she found a second home on game shows. In 1967, she became a regular face on the Hollywood squares. Over the years, she appeared in 28 episodes up to 1980. From her tiny booth in the tic-tac-toe board, she threw out punchlines that became unforgettable. One of her most famous jokes came when she chased a garbage truck and shouted, "Am I too late for the trash?" The driver answered, "No, jump right in." That was her magic. She made people laugh by making fun of herself. People loved it. She wasn't acting like a star, she was being real, and that made her iconic. Behind the scenes, the show felt like a party. She taped 5 shows a day and made real friendships with the other stars. Fans got to see a different side of her, too. She didn't sing well. She smoked a lot. She had 6 kids at home and barely got sleep. But she turned all that into comedy. Even Eddie Murphy said her laugh influenced his own. And she wasn't just joking. She was opening doors for women like Ellen DeGeneres long before anyone knew her name. Then, in 1968, she got her own variety show. It was called The Beautiful Phyllis Diller Show and aired on NBC starting September 15th. It only lasted 13 episodes and ended in December. The show mixed music, comedy, and interviews. Bob Hope, Goldie Hawn, and Norm Crosby were among her guests. Even though she couldn't sing, she still sang. That was Phyllis. She didn't care if it was perfect. She just wanted it to be fun. Ratings were bad again and it got canceled after 3 months. But somehow, even this failure added to her fame. Her bold costumes, huge hair, and wild performances would later influence stars like Lady Gaga. That same year, she toured Vietnam with Bob Hope. Again, she also voiced the monster's mate in the animated movie Mad Monster Party. She was everywhere, even if the ratings didn't always show it. Her film career during the 1970s wasn't huge, but it had unforgettable moments. In 1969, she acted in The Adding Machine as Mrs. Zero. It didn't do well at the box office, but critics were surprised by how serious and emotional she could be. In 1975, she popped up briefly in the Oscar-winning The Sunshine Boys. And in 1977, she had a role in The Great Balloon Race. 2 years later, she appeared in A Pleasure Doing Business. Around that time, she also took over the lead in the Broadway show Hello Dolly on December 26, 1969. She was 52, doing 8 shows a week. Few knew that behind the curtains, her home life was crumbling. Her husband, Sherwood, who had been diagnosed with mental illness in the 1950s, had left her to raise 5 kids on her own. She was working every night just to pay the bills. Still, she kept going. In 1976, she joined The Gong Show and judged ridiculous acts, cackling through the madness. She also appeared on Match Game PM. Her voice was everywhere, laughing, shouting, playing, and she never stopped. She was even in The Muppet Show in 1979 and The Love Boat again and again between 1977 and 1986. By the end of the decade, she had over 40 film credits. She even earned more money than Bob Hope on one of their movies in 1966. Boy, did I get a wrong number because her timing was just that good. She also made an album. It was called Born to Sing and came out in 1968. It wasn't serious. She made fun of her own voice. The songs were off-key and full of jokes, but that was the point. People loved it. She mixed music with stand-up. Her track list included songs like Satisfaction and Hello Young Lovers, all done her way with humor. The album sold okay, but helped her sell out shows on tour. What few knew was that she recorded it while going through hell. Her marriage had collapsed. She had no money. One of her daughters, Sally, was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, and Phyllis visited her every week for decades without telling anyone. In public, she smiled. In private, she was barely holding it together. That album led to her 1968 TV show, and in 1972, she voiced herself in the new Scooby-Doo movies, poking fun at psychic readings. Her fans adored her. Many were from the gay community who saw something beautiful in her loud colors and bold truth-telling. She released over 10 albums in total. Each one felt like a little rebellion. In the 1990s, she became something else, a voice. In 1990, she played the Mouse Queen in The Nutcracker Prince, a Canadian animated film that completely bombed, earning only $1.7 million from an $8.5 million budget. But her performance stood out. Her villainous voice, full of laughter and evil glee, made kids laugh and parents smile. She was also in A Bug's Life in 1998, which made over $363 million. While her voice soared in cartoons, her life was once again filled with quiet heartbreak. Her daughter, Sally, was still institutionalized, and by 1990, her son Peter had cancer. He died in 1998 at age 53. She kept touring, kept smiling, kept visiting hospitals in silence. In 1984, she did something nobody had done before. She made a video about plastic surgery, not just a joke, a real home video. It cost $39.95 and was called Phyllis Diller's Home Video Guide to Plastic Surgery. In it, she talked about her facelifts, her nose job, and more. She said it wasn't just about looking better, it helped her spirit. She even joked that her surgeon was so cheap he bit off her earring. But this wasn't just funny, it was bold. Back then, nobody admitted they had surgery. She won an award from the American Academy of Cosmetic Surgery for being honest. She called herself the Queen of Plastic Surgery, and people listened. She made it okay to talk about it. Even Joan Rivers followed her lead. In 1985, she turned her style into a business. She released her own line of wigs and crazy clothes. At 68, she was turning jokes into profit. She sold wigs that looked like her own wild hair and outfits like the ones she wore on stage. Bright, loud, unforgettable. She had worn wigs every day for years because her real hair couldn't handle the teasing anymore. This business made her a lot of money, and it influenced drag performers and gay fans who saw her not just as a clown, but as a queen. In 1996, at 79, she surprised everyone again. She showed up on the soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful, as Gladys Pope, a makeup artist full of color and wit. She appeared in 11 episodes, blending comedy and drama in a way no one expected. People loved it. What most didn't know was that her health was declining. Her heart had stopped in 1997 and she needed a pacemaker by 1999. But she didn't stop. She never did. Then came 1998, her final stand-up special. It was called Phyllis Diller, Still out for a